Welcome to episode 1. I'm here with Kyle Josephs, realtor out of Worcester, Mass. Currently at Better Living. Kyle, why don't you start by telling everyone who's listening a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a licensed real estate agent living in Worcester, working a lot with multifamily investors, whether that's first-time home hackers or investors doing larger projects.
So have you operated in the Worcester market for a while? I know you grew up there, is that correct?
I didn't grow up in Worcester. I moved there about 5-6 years ago from Connecticut originally, post-college by way of Boston. And actually, I moved to Worcester, like I said, about 5+ years ago, 5 years and change. Left Boston as rents kept going up. And it just wasn't, Boston was kind of overplayed. It was fun after college. It was fun with a full-time income and being young in the city.
Sure.
But longer term, I knew that I wanted to be investing in real estate as I transitioned out of renting. I saw a ton of opportunity in Worcester, and this was before a lot of the construction had been completed. Polar Park was not open. It was under construction at that time. A lot of the city was under construction. I mean, we're talking roads ripped up, potholes galore, all kinds of utility patches, which is still there today in every city. But there's just a ton of opportunity in Worcester in a bunch of different aspects that we're going to dive into.
Yeah. Now, have you found that the opportunity has changed from when you first got there? I've heard a lot about Worcester being on the come up. Are you seeing certain things that are leading you to believe that's the case now, or what's your thoughts?
So Worcester, definitely, it was a little different world, sort of 5-10 years back. The multifamily prices were nowhere near where they are. Currently, the rents are nowhere near, but the finished quality of the apartments, the amenities that were offered for those rental rates, for market rate, is nowhere near where it is currently. Like I like to say, kind of pre-pandemic, you used to be able to get a 3-bedroom for rent in Worcester for about $1,500, maybe a little less, maybe a little more. That's a single floor, 1-level apartment, no in-unit lawn, probably not off-street parking. You might have to pay extra for a parking pass and shovel your street parking spot. And what we've seen since a lot of that sort of post-Polar Park era, where we have a ton of new construction and thousands more units planned to enter the market over the coming years, we're seeing higher quality finishes within the units and those differentiator amenities being in-unit laundry. If you don't have a coin-operated laundry in your basement and you're forcing your tenants to schlep their laundry to the laundromat and then sit there and wait for it and then bring it back, it's a terrible experience. It's a terrible experience for every single tenant that has to deal with that. So people are more than willing to pay a little bit extra for, a washer and dryer on the property, at the very least, where they can feed change into.
Sure.
And a coin-operated machine that's going to produce more income for the owner. And then obviously best case would be having a dedicated washer and dryer in the unit. There's more things to break, more potential maintenance, but it is more than worth it being able to get an extra $100 or $150 a month in rent by offering some of these basic amenities that have become really required in the market.
Now, do you find that these new requirements are a result of some underlying factors in Worcester? Like, are there more infrastructure changes to Worcester that are really creating this uprise in the market? Like you're saying, the qualities and standards of most housing have improved over the past few years. You're seeing those in-house washer dryers become standard. The interior units quality are improving as well. Are you seeing that because there's a draw to go to Worcester now? Is there more job opportunity, or what's driving this change in the market aside from just what we're seeing in the units?
Yeah, that's right. And that's an excellent question. And there's a couple factors at play. First, you have the newer construction properties that are offering these amenities, be it hardwood floors, granite countertops, stainless steel appliances. A lot of times we're seeing tile bathroom. These are finishes that you would find in a single-family home are kind of bleeding, making their way into the rental market. And that's really being brought to the forefront because the new construction properties they're building these properties to a very high level. And now what that does is when we're talking multi-hundred unit, large complexes, large high-rise buildings and so forth, being a finish to that sort of luxury level, if I'm the landlord and owner of a triple-decker in Worcester and I want to get the market rent of $2,000, $2,100, $2,200 for that 3-bedroom, I need my properties to be comparable amenity-wise to the new construction. So that means I'm going to have to spend more money on getting nicer cabinets, putting cabinets in the first place, making sure that the tenant coming in here is going to love where they live. They're going to take care of the property. And when you can spend $1,600 a month for a one-floor apartment with no parking, no laundry, or pay $1,900 or $2,000 a month for a literally brand new construction, everything's new. You're the first person to use that toilet. You're the first person with dedicated parking spots. Little things like we mentioned, the in-unit washer dryer is a big one. That's sort of a non-negotiable. I'm also starting to see dishwashers enter into the rental units, which is like, that's a Boston thing. That's like a South Boston thing.
That's cream of the crop.
Cambridge, Somerville, that's like a nice, the luxury submarkets. And we're seeing that starting to bleed into the rest of the rental stock.
Interesting.
It's actually funny, a little tidbit there is we're actually seeing some tenants request that stuff and say, I want a dishwasher in my unit and I'll pay an extra $100 more a month.
I feel like that's almost counterintuitive to what I would initially think about trying to rent in this market, just given how competitive things are. I've heard certain scenarios where buyers actually have to bid on rental units, and they're getting outbid by other buyers, not only by the amount of rent that they're willing to pay, but by deposits. I've heard scenarios where even my friends who are renting more in the Boston area, so it might not be quite as applicable to Worcester, but they've actually been bidding in terms of how much they're going to put down for a deposit and getting outbid by other buyers. But that's interesting that Worcester might be a little bit different depending upon what you're looking for.
We're starting to see it, and it's actually funny. So most of the time I work with landlords and investors acquiring these properties. They'll renovate, and then they might come back to me and say, hey, now I need tenants to fill them, and I'll help them on that side of things. So most of the time I'm representing the landlord in the rental transaction and receiving those applications, having those conversations with tenants. And I'm starting to see exactly as what you said. If we list an apartment for $1,900, for example, I'm getting people offering $50 more a month, $100 more. Yes, round it up to $2,000. Will you accept my application? Right. Now, the same minimums, the landlord's same minimums being minimum credit score, minimum income, those all still apply. So if I only make $60,000 a year and the rent is $2,000, I might be a little close. I might not even make that 3 times rent or whatever the landlord prefers. So there are caps, being your income that you and your roommates are generating is going to kind of cap your ability to go over.
I've always found that so interesting that the typical standard for qualifying for a rental is 3 times market rent gross monthly income. Because when we look at the qualification perspective from a mortgage, it's much different. We're able to lend a much greater quantity of your gross monthly income. I mean, typically, we can lend up to 50% of your gross monthly income in terms of qualifying for a mortgage, which when you compare it to a third, in the case of renting, it's often eye-opening just to see the differences, especially when you think about we're lending hundreds of thousands of dollars, and these landlords are giving access to a unit for a set period of time, which I've always found interesting.
12 months, not 30 years.
Exactly.
You get it for the next days, not years.
And you don't have this beautiful asset like in the case of owning a home. But I guess a perfect segue into where we were coming from is, do you foresee there being enough demand to keep the current pace of the real estate market in Worcester in terms of rentals and just this competition we're seeing? Like, do you think that this is sustainable?
So specifically on the rental side, there's a couple different factors at play, but I think there's a lot of development going on in Worcester, and it's not just the existing infrastructure or the existing industries are focused around higher education. We've got multiple colleges and universities, some of nationally ranked, very well accredited institutions. We have a lot around the healthcare, be it hospitals and then kind of the outpatient. So there's a lot of highly skilled healthcare workers, professionals in that realm that are making, I know nurses that make in shy of the 6 figures, but in that 70, 80, 90 range, which is pretty respectable income for Worcester especially. Another thing that it's a little bit kind of breaking news sort of thing. If you're not in Worcester, knee deep in it, you may not be super familiar, but there's a ton of development going on down along the Route 9 corridor. There's a huge new biotech, biofarm development, and that is going to bring in tons of jobs. And I'm actually already seeing it with some of the landlords I'm working with, putting their rental units on the market for rent I'm already starting to see some of the international students, grad students, the younger professionals who are accepting jobs at some of these places, and they're already starting to move to the area.
Nice. Are you seeing a certain area have more attraction than others? I mean, is it just a widespread migration to Worcester, or are you seeing that it's more targeted towards certain areas? And if there are certain areas, what are you seeing in those areas that are creating that attraction?
So we talk about Polar Park. I had mentioned it already. If you Google Worcester, the first thing that comes up is going to be Polar Park, Polar Park. So they did their job dumping money at it and doing the marketing. So we've been talking about, we in the real estate investing side of things have been talking about Polar Park for years, before it was ever even completed. And that area, I feel that area is a little bit played out in the sense that if you were to make a move and wanted to acquire a piece of property walking distance from Polar Park, you would have made that purchase a year or two ago. Now you are now that Polar Park is completed, there's concerts, the Woo Sox are crushing it, having games all the time. Sure. You probably hear the fireworks if you're out in Worcester on a Friday night. Because we've sort of hit, I call it the post-Polar Park era. Now that we're open, the businesses are open out down there. We're bringing a lot of tourism. The meter maids now do full rounds. There's a lot less free parking in Worcester.
There's no sneaking a lunch spot.
And stuff like that, though, it's great to see the city not only investing in the actual infrastructure, putting in the granite curbs and so forth, but actually trying to take care of this influx of tourists.
Sure.
Making it a somewhat conducive environment to business where we have a lot of the streets around Polar Park. There's all kinds of bars, that sort of stuff. People are going to come before the game, hang out after the game, and spend their money in our communities, we love that.
Which is great.
But yeah, back to your question there. Polar Park would have been a great move a couple years ago. And we're talking kind of the northern half of 290, so the Kelly Square, the Canal District, that kind of stuff. Those places are top dollar now. And for the same quality of property you could get in other areas of the city, you're getting for $100,000 more, $200,000 more, because people know that Polar Park's not moving. My house is here. I can just sit on it. So yeah, we looked at some properties out there, but a lot of times it seems to be a little bit played out. If you're a cash buyer and you're looking to take down a larger property, or you are not held back by financing restrictions, that kind of stuff, it's your money. You can do what you want. If you want to dump it on a property and say I'm close to Polar Park, by all means. What I see a lot of opportunity is across 290. So sort of like the southern part, south of 290, where you're kind of walking, depending on where you are. There are a couple bridges that cross 290. You could be walking distance to Kelly Square, Canal District, Polar Park at all. But even anywhere in there's a lot of opportunity. We're talking legacy landlords that have had their property, could have been in the family for the last 50, 70 years, 80 years. Market rents are literally half or less than half, or rents on these properties are half of what the market can bear.
Sure.
The finish level of these apartments is nowhere near market. So this is a really good opportunity where the savvy investor or a house hacker is able to acquire a property that's literally a stone's throw from what we know is going to continue to be like the tourist destination in Worcester. Being able to acquire a property that's that close, not only Polar Park, but all the amenities and all the restaurants and the nightlife and the bars and all that kind of stuff, that's very desirable for a tenant who's going to be able to, especially that young professional, someone that just graduated with a degree in biotech or pharmacy or one of these high-skilled industries. They're going to want to live here and pay the money to have that convenience. So if you're house hacking, I would definitely say look on the other side of 290. There's definitely a ton of deals available. Don't be afraid of doing some of the work. Those properties are going to need some renovation to get them to market rent. But by doing that, purchasing a property there and then doing the actual sweat equity, you're going to be able to blow up your equity in the property and you're not going to hurt your market rents. It's still so close to the other comps. You're not looking at the outskirts of Worcester where people have to drive 10 or 15 minutes to go to dinner. So if you're looking at Polar Park, that's kind of where I would be looking personally. Another up-and-coming area that I love is all of the areas that surround Green Hill Park. So Green Hill Park is like a 500-plus acre park smack in like the north center of Worcester. There's a golf course in there. There's a couple ponds. There's a ton of like wooded trails. There's a bunch of the park is cleared with sitting ponds and playgrounds for the kids. And and paved walkways and stuff. So we're talking like a very nice
slice
park.
of heaven.
Yeah, like literally, it's beautiful. I love walking my dog in there, that kind of stuff. But this is not like just a small little park that's a block. We're talking hundreds of acres. There's an entire golf course with a little country club in there, which is a part of this giant complex. It's bordered by a high school over here, so there's the fields. So it's cool. Sometimes I'll go work out in the fields and the weekend. It's just huge. You can run around, do laps, all that stuff. There's some good trails you can run. So that, obviously I'm a fan of Green Hill Park, if you can't tell. That is an area that I'm personally going to be looking to invest more heavily in the coming years, simply because that asset, I see Green Hill Park as such an amazing asset. As these cities continue to get developed and we cram more people into smaller spaces, people are going to want that exterior space, whether that's a porch that they can sit and have their beer or smoke a cigarette, or actually walk through a park, walk through trees, and have that connection to nature that you really don't get in Boston or the other competing cities in the area.
That's a great point to bring up. I think that's absolutely the case. So the more we become trapped inside, not necessarily trapped inside as we have the freedom to do it now without COVID, but become so accustomed to being inside. If you work from home, you might want to have that ability to go take your dog for a walk or go for a stroll at lunch. But something you mentioned a moment ago I want to circle back on is you talked a little bit about value add. Now, are you seeing that investors are looking more towards properties with that opportunity to put some extra sweat equity into in this market? I've heard a little bit of speculation as far as newly renovated properties.
Yep.
And for the investor who looked to flip from 2021 into 2022, they might have missed their opportunity to capitalize on that peak market in June, which leads those to being slightly overpriced. Are you seeing that that's the case?
Well, yeah. So to your point, we're seeing some of those margins get compressed a little bit, whether people over renovated or shot over their budget, that kind of stuff, and they need to kind of make it on the back end. Now, if the market cools, it's going to compress that profit. But a couple of things I look for, so and anyone that's been out on a showing with me, I go insane. I go nuclear on the foundations. I can go into a property and go not even look anything above ground, go into the basement and tell you the history of the property. I'll tell you the last landlords, how dirty their car is, that kind of stuff. There's so much you can infer by being able to walk a basement of these properties. In Worcester, it's par for the course. Fieldstone foundations, which are just literally stacked stones. There might be mortar. If you're lucky, there might be cold stacked, which are literally stacked stones with no mortar. That situation needs to be rectified, where you can have stones literally falling out of your foundation if it's not maintained. But yeah, to your point, when we're looking at properties, making sure that you're not spending money on things that aren't going to drive value. So if you have a compromised foundation and you're going to have to go in there and spend 20 or 25 grand to repoint the foundation, meaning you're going to chisel out the old mortar and then, pay to have someone jam more mortar in. Just a bunch of different ways you do it. Different contractors have different styles, that kind of thing, but it's materials, it's labor. And the bank's not going to look at your property and say, oh, the foundation is not leaking. Wow, it's worth 50 grand more. They're going to say that the foundation shouldn't leak, period. It's required maintenance that should have happened, but that got deferred. Now you bought it and you had to sink your money into the foundation to make sure your property doesn't fall down. And you didn't put that money into the kitchen or adding an additional half bathroom or closing off that parlor and making an extra bedroom. So when I'm out with my investors, I treat their money like mine. I'm honest. I tear properties apart all the time, and sometimes we're able to make a little more attractive offer, whether we're molding the terms to our benefit. Hey, your foundation's garbage. I need 10 grand seller credit kind of thing.
Sure.
In some certain situations, we're able to use the current condition of the property to our buyer's advantage, but there's a certain limit to how much lipstick you can put on that pig. If your roof is leaking and your foundation's falling apart and you have to put, new windows in a couple units, call it 20, 25 windows, something like that, that could be your 100 grand budget right there.
Right.
You could blow a ton of your money on the actual material, the labor to do all of the updates. And on some of these triple deckers, you might have a 100 grand renovation budget, which is for the entire property, inside, outside, the interior upgrades on the units. If you're going to blow all that money on the foundation and not even be able to touch your units, you've already lost.
Right. I've seen this similar conversation around some renovation products when it comes to remodeling a home, where a home buyer will come and say, oh, well, this property I can get for $100,000 under market. It's like, you might be able to, but it needs a new septic. It needs a new roof. It needs new windows. All of those things can be more than $100,000. And like Kyle just mentioned, we have to look at a value. And just because those things make the property more habitable doesn't mean they'll make it more valuable. And I think that's something that's becoming more relevant as people try to find deals. So it's all about being more particular on those things.
Just because the price is low doesn't mean it's a good deal necessarily. Like, to your point, that septic situation could be $100,000 in and of itself. We're talking probably a little bit larger septic, more bedrooms on a single family, yada yada. But if single families in Worcester are only worth $400,000 and you found a deal for $300,000, but it needs $100,000 septic, you lost.
Right.
Because you're not even going to be able to make any valuable upgrades to that property. Just keeping it on par, not dilapidated and falling down, is not good enough.
Sure. Yeah, I think in a sense it's true throughout all life doings, but you get what you pay for to a degree. If there's a deal that's too good to be true, it usually is. So I think that's always worth something digging into and making sure you have an agent on your team to really guide you through these nuances of buying a home, because I not guarantee, but 90% of people, I'm sure, don't know what a fieldstone basement looks like, or fieldstone foundation.
There's pictures on Instagram if you want to see. They're old. They look old and crazy, but not to cut you off there.
Yeah.
They're not the worst ever. This is how we built homes 100 years ago. We didn't have the concrete formulations we have today. We didn't have concrete trucks. These things didn't exist. Right. If you wanted to build a home, you used the materials that were on site, meaning the rocks that you dug out when you were digging the foundation. I don't know if you've ever seen the tree trunks. In the real estate investing world, we call them trunks or just trees. But it's literally, instead of having the current today should be a lolly column, it's the concrete filled metal tube that's the support for the home.
Everyone's seen them in their basement, I'm sure.
Yeah, the metal ones, they're the primer metal. They might be a little rusty depending on how much water's in your basement. And back in the day, before any of those products existed, you would chop down a tree on your property, plane it down, and then use that tree trunk for the main beam in your home. I definitely have pictures I can show you. We can pop up on screen. But literally, it's a tree trunk that's holding up. In the place of that lolly column, there's a tree trunk. And like over time, the wood is going to shrink, or you're going to see, most commonly I see big cracks. And those big cracks in those tree trunks mean that the actual structural integrity of that trunk of the tree is no longer there. If you had a big solid tree trunk and then the fibers are splitting and there's a big crack in the middle, it's sort of buckling under the weight of the house. That's the kind of stuff that I'm calling out and telling my investors, like, if you don't want this property to fall down, you need to spend, and it's short money in the long run. You can find quotes for lolly columns for $1,000 to $1,500. Having to put a few lolly columns in a basement is not the end of the world. You're going to guaranteed you're going to spend more money on maintaining your fieldstone foundation, and it's, in the long run, you can never have too many lolly columns. You can never have a foundation that's in too good of a shape, kind of thing. Sure. It's like same with the roof, your sewer lines. Some of these components of the home, it's very okay to make sure they're maintained, but even like do it a little overkill, it's not going to hurt you, especially if you're in that kind of buy and hold investor. If you're going to be holding this property for decades, possibly handing it down to kids or other family members, that kind of thing, you're going to want to make sure that it's a solid structure, so it keeps printing money into the future.
This might not be the right comparison, but I'd compare that to not holding out on buying brakes in your car, because I'm there where I could probably use brakes, and I'm like
squeaking a little bit.
Yeah, I'm like, for the amount of money that it would cost me to make sure I stop when I want to. I mean, that's money well spent.
Well, in that, so to go with that analogy, you're kind of teetering on there. Your brakes are a little bit worn, whatever. But what if you're bombing down the highway and then there's dead stop traffic? You're really gonna hope your brakes work, and you really, 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 really hope that you don't slam into the next car. Similar sort of scenario is, I got tree trunks in the basement. They're fine. They haven't fallen over for the last 90 years. What could go wrong? Well, then you have one of these uncharacteristically wet winters where we're getting dumped feet of snow, and now you've got a couple feet of snow on your roof, more weight than should be, more weight that was anticipated, and now you might have larger problems. That small little crack might more load on the other areas, and it's going to kind of bleed into the other parts of your foundation and the actual structural integrity of the whole property.
Yeah, I think that all just goes back to making sure you have the right team around you to point these things out and really quantify and qualify what's going on. Not everyone's an expert in every subject, but that's why you got to have the right people to do it.
Home inspectors are worth their weight in gold, 1,000%. It's, to
are you finding
spend.
Sorry to cut you off. Are you finding that's more common now? The home inspections are coming back into the equation?
They're starting to come back slow and steady. So definitely with properties that have been on the market, longer days on market, and we're talking 30, 40, 50, 60, a couple months on market, somewhere in that range. Properties that are coming back on market, meaning they had an accepted offer, they were contingent, the buyer was working through financing, and then the deal fell through for whatever reason. It could have been an inspection issue, could have been a financing issue. The buyer could have just thrown in the towel and said, I don't want it anymore. Depending on how the contract was written, they might have that legal protection. So with that, properties that are coming back on market with a deal that fell through, I'm finding the sellers are even more motivated than they were 2 months ago. In certain situations, the sellers need to sell this home to buy their next one. And if they can't sell the house that just fell through, the deal that fell through, they might not be able to have the money to complete the purchase of their next home, which kind of puts them in a sticky situation. And then these sellers are going to be a little bit more motivated. It's not the lowball market yet. You're not going to save $100,000 off the list price quite yet, but we are definitely seeing more attractive terms. Even if you're writing an offer at list price, but then asking for a $10,000 seller credit to buy down your rate. So now you're saving hundreds of dollars $100 a month for that first year, 2 years, 3 years, depending on how much was used to buy down the rate. And that's a good trick to have in your toolbox. Doesn't always work.
Yeah, no, I've seen that. It's definitely valuable, especially when it's something as impactful as buying your rate down. I mean, it'll yield benefits for years to come. There's returns beyond just the first monthly savings of $100. Obviously, you recoup $100 every month. So if you can save $100 a month for 5-10 years, that $5,000 you got as a seller credit goes much farther than just knocking off closing costs. So that's a great way to apply it. But in this whole essence, we've talked a little bit about the Worcester market and what you're seeing going on, and then what investors look for in terms of different property types, whether it be value add, looking for certain characteristics of properties as they evaluate their investments in respect to where the market's going. Now, I know it's tough. No one has a crystal ball, right? You can't predict what things will be like at the end of the year. If you could, let me know, because we'll all be millionaires.
Yeah, I wouldn't be in real estate.
You wouldn't have to. But what forces are you seeing backing the market, right? Because it's hard to say what will happen in 6 months. But as of right now, what things do you think would have to change for the real estate market to really see an impactful change? Yeah,
and are you asking like home prices?
Yeah, I guess home prices and just the overall market. What forces are you seeing that's going to keep this thing going?
Yeah. Well, so on the home price side, there's definitely some opportunity and there's some softening of the home prices. And that could be either a little more greedy seller who, my neighbor just got $400,000 for their property. Well, my property's nicer because it's mine and I want $450,000, not a penny less than $450,000. Well, that's not the market. If you wanted to sell 6 months or a year ago, that might have been the case, but that's not the case today. So we call it the wish pricing. A seller, I'll sell if you can find me someone that'll pay me $1 million cash. Well,
sure.
Ain't selling it. Hate to burst your bubble.
Yeah, I'm sure you'd love to.
Right? Yeah, okay, me too. But yeah, so that on that side of things, we have that wish pricing where it's just sellers that are overreaching for whatever reason. They might be comping the wrong thing. Just because a triple decker in Worcester sold for $650,000 or $700,000 doesn't mean every triple decker in Worcester is worth $700,000. In certain areas like Vernon Hill, which is super close, that kind of central South Worcester, it's super close to Holy Cross and a couple of other colleges. We're seeing triple deckers trade at that level. But some of the other areas I mentioned around Green Hill Park or the south side of 290, triple deckers are not at that level yet. So there's a little bit softening on price. That could be from uneducated sellers or sellers being steered the wrong way, looking at the incorrect data in whatever capacity. But the flip side, when we look at the rental rates, I definitely think the rental rates are going to remain strong. Zillow and NAR and some of these other big real estate names have started to release their projections going into 2023 and into the future. And a lot of consensus and different authorities are quoting different numbers in terms of how much rent's going to go up or go down, or how much home prices are going to go down. What I'm personally seeing in Worcester is, we talked about the higher education, the number of colleges and universities and so forth. How many people go to school in Boston and then get a job in Boston and stay in Boston and get married in Boston, and then they've been a Boston resident for 20 years? Having the education as a huge draw to constantly bring in new young talent, this not only bolsters the workforce in Worcester, but it's going to create skilled people that are graduating with degrees and remaining in the community, hopefully making higher income, so on and so forth. It's kind of trickle down. But to your point there, kind of on the rental side of things, I think the rental side of things are going to stay strong because we have the influx of that fresh blood, the new people moving to the city. Some students are going to graduate and move out. It's normal. We have a lot of the healthcare industry as well in Worcester, which is great. And then outside of that, like we mentioned, the whole biotech, that is a whole different level of the kind of professionalism and incomes and so forth. You might have a nurse that's making 60, 70, 80 grand. I'm fielding applications from different biotech and pharmacy prospective tenants, and they're making like six figures.
That's huge for Worcester. I think that could be a portion that it was missing. To add to that support, to say, all right, the market can continue because we have these other forces. We have education draw. We have post-college employment that has the high-level jobs you're talking about, like in the biotech space.
So just sort of reverse engineer that biotech employee kind of thing. So we're talking, they probably have a grad degree, most likely, if not a doctorate. We're talking not just a bachelor's degree. These are highly skilled, very specific job roles, that kind of thing. That person that's making that theoretical six-figure income, they could have 10 plus grand income per month. So now when we flip back and landlords want to see 3 times rent, that person that's making 9, 10, 12 grand a month, they can afford a rent of 3 to 4 grand based on the numbers. They might not want to pay that much, but they can if they wanted. Meaning they're going to be able to spend 3 grand a month for the new construction, high-rise, fancy condo with a pool and gym and all the amenities you can ever want. Or they might be able to save a couple $100s and rent an apartment in a triple-decker, assuming that the finished qualities are comparable, that kind of thing. They're going to be the strongest renter in that case because they have the income compared to someone else that might be just makes 50 grand a year, a sales job or whatever it is. They're going to be strapped. The income on that $50,000 earner is going to kind of paint them into a corner. They're going to have a lot less options for what they can even apply to. They're going to just disqualify themselves for a lot of housing opportunities.
Well, it sounds like overall your outlook is positive on the market given some of those factors. And who knows what will happen with inventory or interest rates and what impact those will have. But I'm excited to hear that some of these changes in Worcester are going on to the scale of what I thought. Because everyone always says, oh, Worcester's on the come up, and it's like you hear people talk about Mercantile. It's like, okay, yeah, that's a great bar, but what actually is happening behind the scenes that can justify some of this price growth we're seeing? And it's great to hear from someone who lives it every day. So
I think that place sold for like $7 million, something like that.
It's good, but it's not $7 million.
It's a sweet bar. Like definitely, if you haven't been to Merc, definitely swing by. It's literally like downtown Worcester, right? Maybe like a block and a half, 2 blocks from the Worcester City Hall. It's a few hundred feet from the DCU Center, so it's like smack dab in the center. Mercantile, that whole Mercantile area, it's some sort of hospital, healthcare. It's not a hospital. It's some sort of like outpatient or maybe offices, something like that is in that area. And actually, if you've been to Mercantile, that quad that's there across from 110 Grill, that quad just got sold. I don't forget the price off the top of my head.
Probably something like that.
But that's going to be some sort of a multi-floor housing kind of thing.
Oh, interesting. I mean, that'll add another cherry to that area. I think that'll be nice. So
yeah,
I guess we'll have to see what the year brings. But thanks for hopping on and joining today. It was great talking with you and hearing just the insight from being inside the market, because it's so easy to hear, especially in today's real estate market. You hear all these headline titles that say inventory is increasing and the market's slowing, but then you hear the perspective of someone who's in the market every day in and day out, with their shoes in the mud, and it sounds a little bit different. So it's great to hear that perspective.
Yeah, the news is tough because when the news reports it, they could be a week or two behind. I like to say I'm the news maker. We, being kind of the boots on the ground on the finance side of things, or on physically in the field, in the crawling around the cowboy basements and all that, we are the news makers. We're going to see things like, I know you post a lot, and you're going to see the interest rates moving faster than the trickle down, than the news is going to report kind of thing.
Right.
Same thing, we're going to see a lot of keeping our finger on the pulse because we're so closely tied to all of this. We're going to see those changes happen a little bit quicker.
I think that's a very valid point. I see it every day. People are like, oh, our interest rates are coming down. It's like they did. That was 2 weeks ago.
They're up and they're down every week. So
much different time. And I'm sure you're seeing the same thing. But we'll have to see what the rest of the year brings us and see if these trends hold true. But I have a positive outlook on the market, and it sounds like you do too, especially in the Worcester area. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, Worcester's unbeatable. It's an amazing, there's a ton of opportunity, especially if you're a newer investor looking to build that empire kind of thing.
Sure.
Start with a little nest egg and then kind of grow that out. A lot of people are just priced out of Boston. If you don't have $1 million+ cash or $1 million+ pre-approval, you can't touch a lot of these properties in Boston. Boston triple decker is just such a awesome asset in your portfolio, but you need to work very hard to get to that level. It's not like it was 10, 20 years ago. Worcester is sort of that next evolution. And just like we talked about some of the biotech developments going on, as you keep going down Route 9, look at Natick and Framingham and some of these little bit more developed areas that have a lot of amenities and that kind of stuff. Worcester's the next farthest out. That's the next
stop.
Most affordable place. So that's where they're developing. And a lot of these companies are picking that area because we have the workforce. We're going to be able to attract quality employees.
Well, I think that all makes sense in terms of building the foundation for what Worcester could be. I think you're right. It starts with that infrastructure, and I want to see what it brings. I'm excited to continue, and hopefully Mercantile starts to open a franchise. No,
it's a good time.
It's a good time.
Cool little rooftop bar, roof deck.
Yeah, it's a little snapshot of Boston and Worcester. So maybe that's the start of it. We'll see. Well,
awesome.
Yeah, thanks for joining.
Thank you so much for having me, Ryan.
Pleasure.